Hey everybody, Larry Powell here, your host for Studio HFL, and I'm going to put my best radio voice on to start this. How about that, Aaron? So I'm glad that everybody's here tonight. We're going to wait a few minutes to let people kind of start streaming in, but I'm going to go ahead and start by saying this is a thrill to be here tonight with my guests, the Rom Trio. Of course, that's going to be Ronnie Rom, Avis Rom, and Aaron Rom. And this is part of the Live With interview series. And this month, March 2021, is generously sponsored by Chop Saver, Gosling's Chop Saver. And here's a little spiel for Chop Saver. And Aaron, I swear, I was fine on this until I remembered that I've got a voiceover artist right here. So I'm going to do my best. Chop Saver, the natural, organic, herbal lip care product created by professional trumpet player Dan Gosling. Created especially for the unique lip care needs of wind and brass musicians, and apparently pianists as well. Is that right, Avis?
Absolutely.
Nothing soothes, heals, and protects sore, tired, chapped lips like Chop Saver. No tingle, not greasy, just makes your chops feel normal again, especially after a hard day of playing either trumpet or piano. Chop Saver is used and endorsed by some of the greatest names in the business, including Wayne Bergeron, Tom Hooten, Michael Sachs, Sir James Galway, Jay Friedman, Aaron Rom, Ronnie Rom, and Avis Rom. Chop Saver is even recommended by dermatologists for their patients with chronic lip problems, so you know it's safe and effective. And it's a product anyone can use, a musician or not. And for our HFL listeners, use the coupon code. I'm going to pop this up here. I don't know if I got room left on the screen to pop this up here, but
just hold it up.
No, it's here we go.
It is
20%. 20% off your next order at chopsaver.com. Use the coupon code HFL. So there we go. And let's see, looking ahead, Thursday night, my radio show on WICR 88.7 FM, The Diamond, the University of Indianapolis radio station. This Thursday night is going to be featuring Wayne Bergeron, not Tom Bergeron of Funny Video fame, but Wayne Bergeron, the trumpet player. And then the following week is on the radio program is Ronnie Rom. So we might even talk a little bit about that tonight. And just looking ahead to April, I've got some terrific guests lined up for April. Eric Miyashiro, Mark Gould, and Gabriel DiMartino. And that couldn't be a more mixed bag of trumpet players. So, and of course, April is going to be sponsored generously by Austin Custom Brass. Thank you, Trent, for that. So let's see. I think that's kind of taken care of business. Let me get rid of this code right here and get us back into some... There we go. That looks great. Okay, so Roms, welcome.
Thank you.
It's again, it's a thrill to have you guys here. I'm thinking about when we first met, and it was back at the beginning of 2017, which is only 4 short years ago. But doesn't it feel like we've known each other a little bit longer than that?
Forever.
Yeah,
forever,
and happily so.
And happily so. I tell you, Ronnie, you're the first star I had ever reached out to, and I was, I'm thinking back to that first time I ever tried to dial my girlfriend for a date. You remember the rotary phones?
I do.
Right, and you'd get to that 7th digit, and you'd hesitate, right? Yeah, or you dial it, and then you'd click the receiver down, right, and you'd hang up, and then you'd try it again. So I wasn't using a rotary phone when I called you, but I remember you were like, "Of course." It was just, oh my gosh, what a relief to talk to somebody I had admired and still admire. Right. But my goodness, you were so friendly and still are. And what I've learned is that's that's kind of the whole Rom family. Just a bunch of really nice people.
Who'd have thought that?
Who'd have thought? And really talented. But, okay, so just for perspective, 2017 was the University of Indianapolis's first trumpet conference. You guys were the guests, and what a hit. What a hit that was. And, of course, who knew 4 years later we were going to be dealing with what we're all dealing with right now, right? Life certainly got interrupted. So maybe that's a good place to start. in this slowly reemerging landscape, kind of give us an idea of what's been going on the last year. There's been some evolutions on your end, creations and evolutions.
Right, and Aaron has been at the forefront of the new ROM academies, and he's started out with the launch of the Ronnie ROM Fundamentals Mania, which is an 8-week course on fundamentals, and we do it together, and it's really a blast. It's really a lot of fundamentals.
Fundamentals. So is this any particular routine based, or does it change up on a daily basis?
It's a specific set of routines that Aaron and I devised together. We were just brainstorming and thinking, well, what is it that makes the best players the best players? And we realized, that the best players have the best fundamentals. And the weakest players have the weakest fundamentals. And the most consistent, wonderful performers have the best fundamentals. And that's what they practice the most. That's what whenever they get time off, they're on the road touring. And, in the old days, they were on the road touring and they would get time off. And what did they do? They would launch into their fundamentals, slow scales, slow note bends for trumpet players, just some arpeggios and scales and things like that.
But Ronnie, routines are boring, right? I mean, right. I mean, that was my perspective, certainly for a long time. And, it's some of my students. So what do you suggest when you do this? Not even suggest, how do you make it engaging? How do you make it, if it can be fun?
Well, let me go sideways for that for just a second, and then I'll get into an answer to your question.
Okay.
We had a multi-millionaire friend. We still have a multi-millionaire friend in multi-level marketing. And he said, if you are bored, you are boring. and if you think about it, the routine is not boring. It's the approach that the student takes to the routine that makes it boring. If we find the beauty in every single sonic bliss moment that we can create, then no matter what we play, it becomes interesting and it becomes not boring. And that it inspires us to go forward and move forward and do better. And then we relate all this with the tunes that we're playing. And Aaron and I made up some tunes and duets that we can play together and stuff like that.
Ronnie and Aaron both. I mean, when was your aha moment with that? Right? I mean, you do scales and fundamentals as a matter of, it was assigned to me, I need to do this. But when did each of you realize that, oh, this can be fun? It is making a difference.
Aaron, go ahead.
I think with all of that, we, like you said, we all have that aha moment. I think for me, it actually happened when I first started teaching. Right, especially in group settings, right? And so with this idea in mind of changing the way that we look at fundamentals and the learning to listen differently. That's kind of the difference of this course versus a lot of others. And not to say that there's no merit to others. Everything kind of builds, right? And the idea being that if we want to change something, we want it to not be boring, we have to figure out how to do it and what do the greats do that we're not, right? So what does Ronnie ROM do in his fundamentals that I don't? Like, oh, okay, he's always in a way, we don't want to use the term multitasking, but imagining different accompaniments, for example, during our long tones. So it's not just going "ma" or a moo. It's oh, and then there's a whole band or orchestra going on behind you. So, think that we're losing our minds or just having fun, right?
Or both.
But yeah,
or both.
And so that's the idea. And in a way, they might be simple routines, but they're actually, when you approach them that way, an area of the brain that we're really not used to using by ourselves, right? Of that. Usually we rely on the rest of the band, right? And that's fine. That's important. But having to recreate that in our head while we're playing and singing and making every note as beautiful as possible and holding ourselves to that standard, that's the real challenge, I think, personally, of having gone through the course several times and in building it, of saying, this also takes a lot of mental endurance too, which is applicable to everything that we do as performers. So that's where a lot of that came from.
Well, but you also had it modeled for you, right? I mean, you're growing up in a house, not just from your dad, but from your mom as well. I mean, you're having this model for you. But and sure. Avis, I've got a big question coming for you in just a second. But Ronnie, what about you? Who was the model for you, or when did your aha moment happen?
Well, I going way back, I studied. My very first teacher was my mother, who was a clarinetist. And she used to sit in the front room, and I used to practice in the back room. And she used to say to me, I'd be practicing, and all of a sudden I'd stop, for a little bit of a rest, and I'd hear from the front room, "Was that beautiful enough? It wasn't beautiful enough. You can do it more beautifully." So I was constantly inspired to create beautiful sounds on the trumpet, and we all know how easy it is to make ugly sounds on the trumpet. I mean, as trumpet players, we know we've heard some of the most ugliest sounds on the planet, and we don't want to do that. And so focusing on the beauty of every sound that we make was an inspiration for me. And I was a kid in those days. And then, of course, I studied with Eddie Ehlert, who actually I studied with Al Ruby, who was the lead player with Rudy Vallee's band. And he had this shimmery sound, and he had me do Arbon and scales and things like that. And he used to play them for me, and he had this shimmering, zingy sound, and I loved that sound. I really did. And then I studied with Eddie Ehlert, who was he was the principal player with the Walter Lantz Studios. So you remember
Woody Woodpecker.
Woody Woodpecker was Eddie Ehlert.
Oh, no kidding.
And I studied with him. And then I studied with Lester Remsen, who had been a solo cornetist in the Marine Band in Washington. And then he became the principal trumpet player I'm getting to the answer, believe me.
This is worth the journey.
Maybe. I don't know.
It is.
But see, I'm trying not to be boring.
You're the furthest thing from it.
Well, so then he was the principal trumpeter in the Buffalo Philharmonic, and then he became principal trumpeter in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and then he became a music director, and he always instilled the fundamentals to all of us, then scales and the Charlier book, and how we would relate the scales to these beautiful French named Belgian trumpeter who was a specialist in writing these wonderful melodies, Mr. Charlier, who played principal trumpet in La Monnaie, which was the opera orchestra of Brussels. And actually, a friend of all of ours, Manu Malertz, is now the principal trumpet player in La Monnaie. And so, and Charlie, and all, anyway, and then I studied with Bill Vacchiano, and everything was fundamentals, transposition, scales. So it was a very long aha moment. I mean, really a continuing aha moment. But what I left out was Jimmy Stamp. I spent 2.5 years in Jimmy Stamp's studio doing scales, and a all that kind of stuff, and it always had to be beautiful. And when you did something beautifully, Jimmy Stamp, he would say, wasn't that beautiful? And my lessons with Jimmy Stamp were such that I would go smashing through stuff, because it's probably going to be on the radio show that you're doing this part of what I was always waiting. I would smash through stuff, and then I'd finally get something right. And he'd be very patient. And he'd finally say to me, "Ah, isn't that beautiful?" And I can't tell you, I dreamed about going to my lessons and having him say that to me. It was just
wow.
And it was all fundamentals based. And that was kind of all, and everything was an aha moment leading up to this course, which is a series of aha moments for all of us.
Well, you just demonstrated something, though. It's not only that you play beautifully, but you also are able to sing beautifully. And it's something I have such a hard time convincing my students, right? If you really want to know if you've got it, you should be able to sing it. And I've started to pivot even in this past week, thinking I'm going to assign things not to be played next week, but they need to learn to sing it by next week.
Ooh.
And I don't know, maybe I'm setting myself up for some real disappointment. But I tell them, you don't have to be great singers, but you have to demonstrate some ability. Show me something that you actually get how that line is supposed to go.
Sure. I had an interesting discussion with. I'm capitalizing on all this.
It's great.
Forgive me, family. I'm sorry. I'm just. They know me already. They know I do this. We had a really interesting discussion with Vince Penzarella, who's based down here in Florida. And Vince was of the school. The first 2 years of music lessons, you do not play an instrument. You only sing in solfege. You only sing. Only for 2 years. And then you can pick up an instrument.
My heart just stopped, and it's when you said solfege. That's
so yeah. Do re do sol la sol do. In the wrong key.
Yeah.
Now that's movable do. Okay.
Yes. Right. Of course. So, Avis.
Yes, to speak.
Well, I'm just curious. Do you ever get bored of brass talk? I mean, and do you ever think that, oh my gosh, this is the most neurotic group of musicians ever? Or, well, I'll let you answer that.
I shouldn't say that I'm bored. I do learn a lot. I probably am one of the most educated non-brass players around in brass talk. But then when I have probably had enough, I just kind of tune it out. And I admit that.
Just like the rest of us, right?
Okay, so let's put some perspective on this. You are not just a casual bystander musician. You are an exceptional musician yourself. In fact, a Steinway artist. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
So, I mean, you're kind of the creme de la creme of the people who do this, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you call that, But so yeah, I mean, you have perspective. Okay, so let's talk about fundamentals. Do you have the same approach? Or I mean, I don't know if Hanon exercises.
It's a very interesting question, because I think most pianists, we all grew up doing Hanon exercises, and there's a myriad of other exercises out there. Chopin etudes, you kind of grow up into doing those as well. It's been very interesting this year of COVID, when we haven't been on the road. And so I haven't been playing as many concerts, or just needing to keep myself in shape or ready to do new material. I have felt the desire to go back to doing fundamentals, which I find rather interesting at this point, because fundamentals were not my favorite thing to do, as most of them are, possibly because I was not taught to play them as beautifully as Ronnie had the advantage of having his teachers demand that. In the exercises were, in my education, to build great dexterity and fluidity. And pianists are so fortunate to have so much literature to work on that you can have an exercise book on every phrase in every book.
Mhm.
I have, during my career, I have made exercises out of the phrases that are difficult in the literature I'm playing. Rather than going back to particular fundamentals books, I create my own exercise out of that 16 note lengthy phrase to play, and do that in every key or whatever is necessary with that particular phrase. So
Mhm.
the more I age, the more I am a firm believer in fundamentals one way or another. I do try and get my students to create their own fundamental exercises as well. And we create those in our lessons.
Mhm. I love the idea of creating uh, the means to an end, right? It's not just like us going back to Arbon just to go back to Arbon, or irons, or whatever, just to do it. It's like we could have something that's irons based, right? Oh, the flexibility in this piece, I'm going to do it right. So I think that's brilliant. But to me, it also means you're approaching things from a much more musical context right away.
Well, perhaps that's out of necessity because there is so much piano literature, or there is so much collaborative literature that uses different phrases, that I have to become fluid more rapidly.
I love the term collaborative. And I remember vividly my interview with Sergei. And of course, Maria Mirovich, his collaborative, they are a chamber music duo. She is not his accompanist. And that was an aha moment for me. It was like, oh, yeah. It's like, you're not just there to make sure I don't fall apart in the Hindemith, or to make sure that right? I don't know why I picked that piece.
Partly.
Well, yeah, okay, so maybe so. But, to really view what you guys do as a duo and a trio, and even, I don't know if there's anything beyond the three of you, but it's a collaboration. This is not, I'm just going to accompany you and help keep time and find you when you get lost, and, and vamp until you can, right?
I don't think any of us would want to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain pieces of music that we work on that require more of a boom chuck accompaniment that might not be to save the musical line, but the musical integrity of it still requires positive musical collaboration, no matter what.
Well, but even if it's a boom chuck, it has to be in the right style.
Exactly.
Right? You can't just be ham-handed like I would be playing that sort of thing. And I remember talking about vivid memory, the performance that you put on here at UIndy, and I loved that you were actually featured. It wasn't just trumpet, 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 and piano. It was, and I don't recall the piece, unfortunately, but it was like, let's take a breath. Let's get the trumpet out of the way for a minute, and enjoy your playing. And I love that, that those levels in a performance like that, because, well, first of all, it actually showcased, a really fine musician. So I love that. I appreciate that. And if I ever do recitals again, I would try to wrap that sort of thing into what I do. Rom Trio.
Rom Trio.
Right? What? Okay, so that's three people. The three that I'm looking at right now. What? Where did that start? When did that start? And it's still going, right?
It is still going. Absolutely.
I think it was when Aaron was born.
Really?
The trio. Well, of course.
Okay.
Immediately had my C scale ready to go and everything.
That's amazing.
We're good to go with,
He sang the snot out of the C scale when he was a little one.
Screaming, right?
Larry, our first, I would say, official performance as the trio. I think it was back in 2006. To my memory. And this was at the Blair School of Music at Vanderbilt University, and that was we still play that particular chart. That's the Ritual Fire Dance.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and from there, we said like, hey, this can be a thing. Yeah, let's take this on the road. Very different than that, but. Long story short, that's what happened. But we started talking about different repertoire, and we started putting things together. My first big project, I shouldn't have started with this one, but I did anyway. And was I found out that Toccata and Fugue in D minor, the Toccata and Fugue was a 3-voice fugue. I said, wait a second, there are 3 of us. We can do this. And that's when I haven't ever transcribed or arranged anything before. That's a terrible place to start because it's a monster project. And anyway, we developed this a pretty good collection of a really lovely repertoire that is not really played in this format anywhere else.
And that's interesting too, because Avis, you mentioned the depth of repertoire available for the piano, but of course, trumpet players, we don't have that. And this is another thing. I'm sorry to mention Sergei again, but I am rather fond of him. But the fact that you reach outside of the trumpet repertoire, there's so much great music, and the fact that you're playing it on trumpet, so what, right? I mean, you're getting to play and share really spectacular music. And who would ever imagine doing the Toccata and Fugue? I mean, I get nervous even thinking about it. Hard enough for the Canadian Brass to pull off with 5 players, right? But which I think was pretty successful. But I love that challenge because I think it shows to all musicians that there's no limit, right? It's only what you put in front of yourself or don't put in front of yourself to play.
Absolutely. And of course, we've always had these dreams. Avis and I had dreams of family organization. And I grew up with a family band. My parents and my sister and I had a family band when I was very young. It was called the ROM Antics, ROM-Antics. And we were a dance band, basically. But we did live radio, live television, things like that. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. So when the opportunity arose for us to go ahead and do this, it was very poignant to actually create something together to do.
Well, and not just the musical aspect of it, right? I mean, the theatrical part of it is, I can't imagine you not doing it. And especially people who had watched you with Canadian Brass, I don't think could see you standing on stage rather stoically, not engaging.
I tried
with anyone.
Believe me, I tried.
I don't think you did. Well, maybe you did. Maybe you did. But it just seems to come so naturally for all of you, right? This presence on stage, and I love that the fourth wall gets. Well, it doesn't even get built. It never gets built. It's down from the beginning, right? And I think that's one reason that that is so successful, right? Is you communicate. You're right there, looking me in the eye. And maybe I'm an extrovert, so I don't get nervous. But maybe there are people in the audience that do stop looking at me. Stop looking at me, Aaron. Don't look at me anymore. But okay. So let's talk about that for just a second, about the fourth wall and what it means to take that down for you guys.
Well, my answer would be obvious. You should probably get it from one of the other two. For me, the fourth wall has never existed. The idea was that we are one entity. We are all from the same energy, and we need to exchange that energy. And if we do not do that, we're blocking. When you study stage behavior, you have the open and then you have the block. Okay, so if you see someone talking like this, you know that you're not going to make very good headway with them, right? And
so, you couldn't tell, but I was sitting that way a minute ago. But it was only because I had nowhere nowhere to put my arms.
You know,
But,
I try and do that, and I get this. You know. So
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
no, it wasn't. Anyway, the idea of changing the energy and having that energy coming from, you know, the ether, and having the music inspire us to share that energy, to share that musical energy, and that visual and audible energy is there is no fourth wall. I mean, you cannot have it. Otherwise, you're just you wouldn't. How should I say it? You need an audience to have a concert. Without an audience, you can have a rehearsal, you can have a recording project, you can have a video project, but you cannot have a concert without an audience. And so to sell that short by creating or putting up or hiding behind the fourth wall is not only silly, but it's detrimental to life and nature. There, that's that. I spit it out, but I think you'd probably get better answers from these two.
Well, Avis, I'm curious. You know, in your concertizing outside of the trio, right? I mean, you've recitals, yes,
Yes.
Performing with orchestras.
I think going back to even the group, so many of the artists during this past COVID year have been talking about how they miss playing. And it's not just going out and playing, it's because of the energy that we all draw from the audience. That's part of what we're missing in this year of not being able to share it. Now, I find working collaboratively with anyone, it's even easier to break down the fourth wall because you're already sharing with whomever you're working with on stage, or whomever is supporting you while you're doing your solo spot. You know that they're there for you. No one is trying to criticize, or hopefully not. If you're creating a great ensemble that gives out the love in the music, then you're creating that love on the stage with each other as well. So it can be very challenging for a personality who's very shy to let that happen. But once you let yourself get into the music only, there is nothing else but the love of that music. And that's what goes out and hopefully comes back.
I mean, my lips dry.
Yeah, you know what? This is a great point to talk about. You know, I'm feeling rather. I need to take care of some business here. Excuse me while I put my chop saver. My, that is refreshing, isn't that? Oh, I'm young again.
Bye, chapped lips.
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten what chapped lips feel like. That's just, it's magical. They're all tingly. And okay, so you know, Dan's probably like, I'm so regretting sponsoring this, but you know, well,
we will not do any product placement here.
Yeah, but I tell you what, this it is a great product, and
it is.
I think I go through more of it during the winter months.
Yeah.
Right. But it's good stuff. And I tell you, Dan Gosling, there's not a better guy out there. You know, it's great that he was one of my teachers during my master's degree.
Fantastic.
So I know, and we've played together a good bit. Dan is a beast of a musician who happens to play trumpet, and you know, has created this terrific product. So
yeah, and he's a graduate of the University of Illinois.
I didn't know that.
And he came. I had him over to the university to do a full day of lectures, and he worked. We did a lecture for the School of Music and on an entrepreneurial endeavor, and he also talked with the business school. And it was a fascinating day.
he and I have connected quite a bit on the entrepreneurial front these last couple of years as I've been trying to do things, and I think he's pretty smart, pretty savvy on that side of things too.
Absolutely. Hi, Dan.
So, Aaron, the fourth wall probably never existed for you, did it?
I guess not. What you mentioned before about modeling fundamentals and all that. Growing up, the mom and dad never made a big deal about what it was that they did, right, for their occupation, and it was just always around, So it was never a big deal, in our household of worship your father, be respectful, of course, but his dad first. And so growing up watching the Canadian Brass and dad being dad on stage, it showed a few things which were pretty impactful in a very positive way of like, whenever it is that you're doing that, you are sharing. That was one of the words that they used earlier. And it's even if it's a me thing, it's still also us. We're all in this together, even if it's a solo. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing in my education and moving forward with a career and ending up doing a lot of solo work. Even then, it's always been about us, right? So, whether it's, on the stage or with the audience, and that's a really important thing, especially right now. I feel like this mm-hmm. idea of sharing and having the courage to be open about stuff, right? And I'm talking really musically, but also just in general, right? There's a time when we seem to be so scared and self-protective, and that makes your music suffer, I think. And so when you open up and invite, in this case, an audience to share just a couple minutes of sounds with you, that's a pretty beautiful thing. And I went to my first concert a couple weeks ago, and before COVID, I was busy enough playing that I didn't have really time to go to a lot of concerts, and I was very fortunate that way. Mm-hmm. But my wife was a concert mastering for a little orchestra down here, and I went out and heard it, and it was such a strange experience sitting in the audience and hearing actual vibrations and all that. And I don't mean that metaphysically. I mean that vibrations of sound, right? And it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience, and I think everybody felt that way. And again, like words are kind of failing me right now, and I speak for I think all of us musicians when I say we're looking forward to doing more of that and that expression, just saying whatever it is that we got to say. So.
Well, and even in rehearsal, I've got a streaming recital coming up next week.
Great.
Next Tuesday night, as a matter of fact, and it's just a little brass quintet. Not just, it's brass quintet. But even last week at our first rehearsal, even sharing with 4 other people, right? I mean, they're not necessarily an audience, but just that collaborative part that, yeah, you're right, Avis. That's, I think, what most of us miss is that sitting next to, your colleagues in an orchestra, yucking it up with the trombone players, making fun of the viola players, ignoring the conductor as much as possible. And it's just, and, I love all my music directors, not equally, but I love them all. And again, I hope they're none of them are watching this. They've got their heads buried in their scores for next season. So, boy, there's some real issues coming out here, aren't there? I mean, I've got some deep things.
Go on, Larry.
It's really good, Larry. You're doing great.
Oh my gosh, this is we're not live, are we? Oh my gosh. So, and I sidetracked myself. Oh, Aaron, what you're talking about too. There's a level of vulnerability that's been shown this past year, not just by trumpet players. That's who I see in my Instagram and Facebook feed. But I think every musician who's yearned for that, right, has risked making themselves vulnerable, right, even with it, like you say, for a couple of minutes, or whether it's a full performance. And I'll admit, I haven't done that yet. I mean, this is as close as I'm getting to. I won't put myself out there playing my trumpet yet. Just maybe at some point, but there's enough great stuff out there that nobody needs to have me playing out there right now.
Oh, Larry, to be fair, Larry, what you do is such an important part of, and I think not very well understood by a lot of people going forward with online presence and the ability to, as you're doing right now, communicate not only coherently. You're doing a much better job than I am with that. Communicating coherently, but also honestly, and in a way that is engaging. That's it's very easy to make fun of someone like Conan O'Brien on national television, right? The guy's, I love a show, but when we're not the ones on the other side of the camera without any feedback, basically, right? Mm. So that type of communication, I think we've all gotten a little bit of a taste of that, of preparing stuff to put on Instagram or Facebook and all that. And without that energy, something feels missing, and it's hard. So know that I'm going to speak for Mom and Dad here, but we very much respect everything that you do and the abilities that you put together in your projects. So well done, Larry.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I that means a great deal. I wish I could just show you how much that meant, and of course that would include a hug, but we can't hug each other right now. So what's kind of exciting and a little terrifying at the same time is to see how many podcasts have come up during the pandemic. And I'm thinking, okay, I was here before all this started, but I love it, and I love the amount of exposure people are getting to musicians that may have not happened before. And I can't worry about what other podcasts do, right? I'm just trying to have fun and, have great conversations, get some information out there. And you notice we haven't talked about mouthpieces yet. It would be like,
that's why they're
Avis,
here. We don't have to talk about them.
Avis, what's your favorite brand of string to put on your pianos? I mean, that's it's like, what do piano players say?
We don't talk about the strings. We might we might talk about the action, or the type of sound that particular instrument creates. But and more often than not, it's about the action, whether it's stiff or really an easy, fast action.
So you guys have things you can geek out in conversation, right? I mean, you have things you can talk about.
Yeah. One of the interesting thing about pianists, though, is we end up spending so much time alone in the practice room that we're used to being alone. So I saw a cartoon early on in COVID about someone who was saying, this has been really an interesting learning experience for me with COVID. I realized that I'm not having any different kind of a life than I did before. And it was for when you're used to practicing in a practice room, unless you're a collaborative musician, you spend hours and hours a day alone. So you're not gigging out and saying what kind of action, unless you need to know what the instrument in that hall is like, or what did you think, or how did you deal with it?
I want to go back to something you mentioned. Chopin. William, my 14-year-old, he's going into his third year of lessons, and he's playing some Chopin. I think a mazurka, or I can't remember.
Well,
but
very well if he's only in his third year.
Oh my gosh, he watches YouTube videos. He's Daniel Barenboim. We love his Beethoven.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's thrilling. Valentina Lisitsa. And William's got a whole bunch of people. He'll just sit and listen. He loves I can't remember all. Liszt. In fact, Liszt is his favorite. Liszt was born in 1811. We'll go for a walk and they'll say Liszt, and he's like giving me history of, so he's
that's wonderful.
Absorbing this. And I told him you were a Steinway artist, and he's like, really? So, I may have to see if he has any questions for you at some point. But I'm just thrilled that he's grown up around me and Jenny, right? It's not like we've pushed him to do anything. It's just we've provided a great atmosphere. And Jack, our 11-year-old violinist, same thing. Right. But it's what he's absorbing, and so he knows what the piano's supposed to sound like. So he sits down and tries to replicate what he hears.
That is so fantastic. I am thrilled to hear it, and congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
You also for creating an atmosphere that he could thrive like that. That's wonderful.
I tell you, this is a great segue into Suzuki. Not that we're going there, but I totally have been consumed totally with Suzuki and the philosophy and understanding that it is that atmosphere, right? From the moment of birth, surround them with love and nurture them, and just if you want them to be a musician or a great mathematician or whatever, provide that atmosphere. And yeah, Ronnie, you're nodding your head. I think you agree with that.
I'm 100% Mississippi hot dog in favor.
Ice cream, good. Ice cream, good. Right. So whatever pattern you want to throw on there. Right. But and we can talk about Suzuki later. But so I do want to ask a little bit about the ROM Trumpet Academy. I know I'm kind of doing quick left turns, but this is something that's come about through the pandemic as well, the RTA.
The RTA. We launched it in the middle of the pandemic, seeing the need for practice materials and all that. But we're actually developing this course over the last 2 years or so. It's gone through many iterations of how to structure it, and of course, in the next few courses are in development from what we put together and what we didn't get a chance to include in the first course. But yeah, the idea being that hearing it from Ronnie, and when it's tried and true, these are the if not the same, but very, very, very similar routines to what he uses, and the philosophy behind them. For example, everything's a long tone, right? When you think of things like that, it kind of changes the way you approach line, right? And just as a little geeky example there, but that's the idea of how Ronnie approaches it. And it's not about saying we're going to make you the next best, greatest lead player. That's great if you do, right? And that's a really thrilling thing for trumpeters. But I think the idea being like, well, what is it that Ronnie is especially Dad, what have you contributed to the music world? A lot, right? And that sound and that the overall musical ideas, and how to approach fundamentals with those ideas. I think that's the goal with every course that we're going to be. So, and to answer your question even more directly, Larry, it's a set of video courses with accompanying routines and master classes over an 8-week time span for this particular course. And we'll have courses coming out that are different time frames or no time frame at all. Do it at your own pace and your own leisure and your own caution.
So this isn't necessarily the tie-in with the fundamentals that you guys were talking about at the top of this, right? That's
exactly what it is.
Oh, it's exactly what it is. You're just doing it live. You're not doing it in video.
No, this is all everything's video courses. Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. I guess, right. Sorry. In my mind, I'm thinking video. It's like you're recording it and you're putting it out there, for sale, that sort of thing.
Yes. It's all of the above. It is. And then along with that, there is a community of those who decide to be a part of it and sharing those ideas and keeping up with one another of practice routines. What are we finding? What are we challenges that we're finding with this particular routine and all that. So it's a chance to build another community with that idea.
Avis, are you involved with that?
Well, I just want to, this goes back a little to, do I get bored with things with the trumpet? But having been an observer as this entire project came to fruition, I have to really congratulate both Aaron and Ronnie, because this being a video course, it is encompassing the energy that both Aaron and Ronnie project when you're talking to them live, like now. It's not this is the way you do it. Their personalities come so beautifully into the project that you can't help but be inspired to go with it. It's not just the instrument or the fundamental. It's their, not persuasion. It's
our personality. We show our personality.
Yeah.
We're not shy about that. But we are relentless about the pursuit of excellence. And but the point is that excellence takes whatever time it takes to attain. We are already perfect, so if we're seeking excellence, we're on the right page.
So I'm not bored.
Well, I can sense that. I mean, your enthusiasm even comes through right then and there. So, hang on. There are two things I want to hit before I forget them.
Okay.
Aaron, you said everything is a long tone, and I've been thinking for the last few years, it's like I tell myself and my students, everything's a flow study.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing.
Same idea.
And you know, so then you turn to Brant number 6, and you're like, how in the world is that a flow study, or how's that a long tone? Right. All the angularity in that. But if you approach it the right way, it is.
Yeah, you can make it so, and all of a sudden it seems to make sense musically that way too.
Right.
So yeah, and that's one of those things. Like, for example, the what we all play of the stamp studies, right? All those, you know, I don't think there's anything that's really like out there that's magical, right? That's going to fix everything. You could play anything with that same idea of flow, of line, of direction, of, in my case, I like the long tone of making everything a long tone, just because I like the merging of musicality and mechanics like that. Maybe I'm just a Transformers geek, I don't know, but you know, that's partly where I'm coming from with it, and just approaching it with that idea.
Is it the opening? Is it Rienzi or Oberon that starts with the really
Rienzi,
soft?
yeah.
Rienzi.
Yeah.
So you know, if you ever want to prove to somebody that you need to practice this kind of playing, right? I mean, it's right there. It's right there. So, Ronnie, I've been reading Mark Gould's new book, which I think is terrific.
I don't know the book yet. I haven't gotten it yet.
Gould on music. Well, you're in it.
Yeah. Well,
and something I read just yesterday was Mark was talking about brilliance, or no, he was talking about don't distinguish between dark and bright. He said, my friend Ronnie Rahm just says, you know, focus on brilliance. And boy, that was well written. In fact, it's probably better written than what I just paraphrased, reiterated. But
I'll have to thank him for that.
Yeah, but you know, when I read that, I started thinking back to everything I've heard you play over the many years, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. You know, regardless of what the piece was, there's brilliance in the soft lyrical, and there's brilliance in the fast technical. You know, it's there's a shimmer. It's like Doc's playing, right? There's an electricity no matter what he's playing.
Absolutely, with Doc, yeah. Doc is a stunner that way. Will always be. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, thank you. And you know this. Tell me, how do you get students? And this goes for you too, Avis. How do you get students to listen, not just to you, but to great musicians?
Sorry, what were you saying?
Aaron, I'm about to lose you.
I'm just
kidding.
No.
No, it's to me, we've such the opportunity, right? I mean, we don't even have to go to the listening library and check out an LP and rent dirty headphones and you know all that. Yeah. We have so much at our fingertips.
You know, it's really true. When I was at Juilliard and I didn't have a stereo in my room that I was renting in New York, and I had to get from 121st Street down to Lincoln Center, ride the bus for 45 minutes to get their sign out, just because they couldn't be taken out. So for my listening for everything, it would take 3.5 hours to listen to half an hour of any great recording at that point. And now kids just pick up their phone to do it. But I find one of the challenges today is that young students are involved in so many activities, particularly music students, because they're so talented in so many areas, that they are time constrained themselves. And I would love for them to have more time to focus on just music, but they are advantaged young people who have the ability to be educated in many different forms. And they're so busy with their AP this and everything else if they're at that point. So getting them to listen is not their priority. They're just glad to get to the music to be able to play it themselves if they can. So I haven't found a great way other than demanding it. And I don't think that's particularly inspirational for them to say, you were going to listen to so-and-so and these three different and tell me they're different concepts. Hopefully they get to hear one that they loved, and then it will snowball for them. That's my own personal challenge, to find the right one that I think will trigger that particular motivation on their part. And if you come up with a better way, please let me know.
Oh, that's why I'm asking. I'm in search of, right? I mean, this is like the big. I don't even care what mouthpiece I play anymore. I'm more concerned with the answer to this question.
It's interesting. I was working with one of my DMA students today, who was playing a very, very nice section of a very nice piece, which is quite famous. And I said, well, why are you doing this way? It needs to have a little bit more shape, and it needs to have everything going to the next thing, next thing. And it didn't connect. So I grabbed my phone and I pulled up a performance of Doc Schlitzer doing it. And I put her down next to the microphone. I said, here you go. And after 45 seconds of that, then I said, okay, what did you derive from that? And we had a discussion. Okay. And it was about shape and content. And I think the idea of research is still very difficult for our students. The internet has given us everything, and they're still busy playing games on it.
Guilty.
I agree, but you also use it for research, and
of course.
And the students haven't quite gotten the connection between this incredible, literally unlimited information source that they can actually go to. And so my little message was, okay, here it is on my phone. Boom.
Look how easy that was, right?
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, please continue.
No, I was done.
Fine, I'll go. So,
okay.
one of the, everything that you mentioned before, Larry, in the very beginning is you talked about modeling, right? And modeling a certain sound and all that. And then Dad, Mom, everything that you were saying, like one of the things that I've run into outside of music in voiceover was that I realized applies directly to music and teaching, was knowing what to listen for. Right. So it's one of those things. If what I've found, at least, if I tell a student to go listen to, these particular recordings, whether it happens or not, I'm always curious to find out what they're actually hearing when they listen. Right? Are they looking at the page and saying, that's how that note goes? That's how this series of notes goes. Right? Or are they hearing the texture? Are they hearing the shape? Are they hearing the underlying rhythm? Are they hearing the harmonic movement? Right, stuff like that. So what I found to be really, really useful, and just in my own education, and it's like I've tried it out with students, and even in group settings, it seems to have some kind of an impact of starting to uncover what to listen for, saying, can you hear what this person is doing here in regards to shape? Can you hear volume? Start with very simple things, right? And then grow from there. And what I've found that just having to do that for just, learning the craft of voiceover, like I didn't hear anything. I wasn't used to listening to speech in a pitch pattern per se. Singing, sure. But for whatever reason, it took me literally a few years to figure out, it's like, oh, the people do speak in with pitch levels. Right? And so to me, it was a matter of connecting music to another thing. It was like, they're pretty much the same in a lot of ways. So, that directed listening to that of saying like, okay, I can't hear it. Let me see what I can latch on to. And that's been a really interesting thing for, once that ties into other things that we do, and especially in performance, when we start to hear other things that we didn't expect to before, whether they're right or wrong.
I'm thinking about, I certainly didn't know anything when I started playing trumpet in 7th grade. I didn't know that much more in high school. College, which was the best 17 years of my life, I didn't necessarily. But what I'm getting at is, I want so badly for my undergrad students to learn in those 4 years with me what it's taken me, 40 plus years of playing. Right. I think that's kind of what we all want to do. Right. It's like, you don't need to take this 40-year journey. You can do it here in 4 years. And I think what I'm realizing is, no, right. We can plant the seed. We might not see the fruit of that. Right. And we may never. But the hope is that they will at some point, have that same aha moment. Right. And I realized too, there are certain times in my life where I wasn't ready to learn whatever was being put in front of me. That's a hard thing to admit.
No,
it's like
it is.
We're all there. And
I think the point of realizing as a teacher what it is that particular student needs, that I can give them at that time, be there, insufficient in reading music or letting it out. As someone in a music store the other day said to me, this is a person that has their inside out. Their music is all inside, but they can't get it out. So my job is to find the key for them to unleash whatever it is that is going to help them create the beautiful music that they're really studying to do. But finding that key, it can't necessarily be what worked for me then. It has to be, I have to expedite their process. So
yeah,
I've really respect these teachers who can work in group settings and pick out this individuals. I don't think I'm that talented in that way. I need to feel the inner person of the individual to find out the key.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that interesting? I mean, I realize I don't click with every student, right? I might not be the best person to teach them.
Yeah,
which is another hard thing to admit.
Yeah, we all have some of that. One of the things that has helped me along the way is the continual study of learning how the student learns. If I can get on that track, and that's very much what Avis is into. If I can get on that track, and with trumpet playing, it's really, really critically important because, again, anybody can sound ugly on a trumpet. Anybody. literally. Once we can get them to actually understand, as Aaron was saying, what to listen for and how to listen for it and connect that, then we're learning how they learn, and we can inspire them to kind of glom a little bit of that from each of us and our skills, and then go listening for those attributes in other players. I like, for example, more recently, this last year especially, because of the internet and teaching everything remotely, I have really done a bunch of I play, you play with the students, a bunch more than ever before. Basically, dissecting musical line, dissecting musical phrase, understanding shape, understanding direction, all of those things in an I play, you play setting. And I ask them specifically, okay, what did I do that you didn't do? Sometimes you get an answer, sometimes you get silent.
Well, that could kind of go back to what Aaron was talking about is, you don't know what they're hearing necessarily. Are they really hearing that musical line? Are they hearing a certain timbre? Or do they even know how to define timbre, right? Or are they listening to articulation? Or are they kind of, I want to say deaf, but you know what I mean? They're just, they don't know how yet to interpret.
Exactly. Right. And so that's the challenge that we're facing, all of us, when we're dealing with the educational format. And that's the beauty of the education. I mean, as the interesting thing about education that I've been able to kind of wrap my head around is that as a performer, you have a finite life. As an educator, you have an infinite life. You teach students, who then teach students.
Hang on a second. Do you hear anything on your end?
Yeah, it was pretty noisy. Now it's okay. Nope.
It's like a frequency cutting in.
Yeah.
Okay, that is really strange.
Cool. Cool. Someone's taking dictation.
We're gonna okay, that's the first time that's happened. It's kind of like CB. I remember CB cutting into AM radio sometimes.
Yeah.
I am more excited about learning and teaching now that I've ever been in my life. Suzuki has helped with that, but I think the more I teach, the more excited I get about improving my own playing. And would you guys all agree with that?
Yes.
It's just kind of the cycle. Almost, it's not a vicious cycle, but it feeds off
itself.
Right?
Yeah.
One more thing I forgot to say earlier, and I'd like to just jump in there. Like, part of what we have in common here, and everybody listening, is that we love what we do, right? We're at least inspired by it in a positive way, and we want to do better. Like even when we have a great day of teaching and a great day of performing, we still want to. There's still that pursuit of wanting to do and improve, and not do better in a negative way, but like you say, like I want to improve this. I want to find a more streamlined way to do this, right? And sometimes not everybody's on that same train, right? And so I think we're also operating under the assumption that everybody is sometimes, and sometimes they're not. So being that force, sometimes it's not even about music. It's just being able to communicate in such a way that puts somebody else at ease, and allows them to say, like, okay, I didn't realize that I wasn't trusting for whatever reason, for example, and say, okay, then now that we've broken down that figurative fourth wall and said that, hey, we can communicate now. Let's talk about this music. Right? Let's get excited about something for whatever reason. Let's geek out over trumpet music.
It's interesting the way you just said that. I had never thought about there being a fourth wall in a lesson. In that teacher-student exchange, the relationship.
Well,
Yeah,
it's part of the challenge of having grades in an academic institution too, right? And I'm not
Mhm.
saying I have a better idea. I don't have any solution to that, but I think there when we're left to like the most ideal situation would be simply a student comes to you and they desperately want to learn. Like, I have to learn. I have a burning desire to learn the trumpet, and I want teach me sensei, right? And it's like, perfect. This is a great relationship already. But when other things are involved, such as grades, such as tuition, such as things like that, then that has the potential to cloud it, right?
Mhm.
Because we have to, it has to be under a certain guideline, right? And equally challenging on the flip side, when there are no guidelines, that's equally challenging, right? So finding that way, we as educators have a wonderful responsibility and a quite a challenge when we treat it as such in a positive way, because we also need to know ourselves. We know ourselves as people and musicians of how to do that, how to best articulate it, how to best play it and communicate that.
Mm-hmm. All I want to do is keep learning, and it's like I keep seeking out Doc. I talked to Doc a couple months ago, and first thing he said was, "Larry, how's your chops?" And I said, "Doc, they're great. How are yours?" He goes, "Well, not too bad. I haven't played yet today," but he goes, "I just started this new routine. You ever hear of Tebow?" And I'm like, okay, if Doc Severinsen at almost 94 years of age is still looking to do something new and keep himself, what excuse does anybody else have?
That's it.
Right? It's a constant search for, and it can be a better mouthpiece, right? But it's that constant search for growing. And what was I heard last week? When you stop growing, you start to decay. Right? I think, oh yeah, that's a great way to think about that. But
yeah.
Guys, I could geek out on this. We've been going a little bit over. I was only planning on an hour. I hope we're okay. But let's. Oh my gosh, I want to ask. Let me do this before we go in. Let me get another plug in here for ChopSaver, of course, generously sponsoring. Yeah, that's your cue. That's my cue as well. ChopSaver. Oh man, that really does feel good. ChopSaver, the natural, organic, herbal lip care product created by professional trumpet player Dan Gosling, created especially for the unique lip care needs of wind, brass, and keyboard musicians. Nothing soothes, heals, and protects sore, tired, chapped lips like ChopSaver. And of course, let me throw this code back up here while we're here. ChopSaver, 20% off your next order at chopsaver.com. Use the coupon code HFL, which is Hear From Legends, or Hear From Larry, or Higher, Faster, Louder, however you want to think about that. And I have a shipment coming. This is true, a shipment coming. I think it's supposed to be delivered tomorrow. So I bought my own. Let's get things back here.
All right.
Okay. So there's a plug. Thank you, Dan and ChopSaver. It is a terrific product.
It is great product.
And there's another. I've wanted so badly to see him on Shark Tank, right? I wanted to see him, get one of these multi-million-dollar people behind him. But man, there's the testimonial for working hard, Dan Gosling, right there, right?
Yes.
So, guys. I always think this has been the best lesson I've ever had. This time, I always feel like this is just for me, right? Everything we've just done, I've learned so much, and I have. And the fun part is it's not over, because when I go back to listen and edit, right, I'll think, oh, I missed that the first time. That was brilliant, right? There's so many great things in here. Thank you all for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
I really appreciate it. I'm curious, Avis, I want to ask this question. Who's your favorite? Is it Glenn Gould? Is it, I don't know. I'm just pulling that name out. Who is it that inspires you?
It's very interesting. Lately, I've been going through a lot of memories. And one of the things that's been inspiring me lately is when I first went to New York, my teacher had said to me, and this was the night before school started, and at the time I didn't realize what an incredibly generous offer this was on his part, but he said, I can't go tonight to hear Horowitz at Carnegie Hall. Would you like my ticket? And at that point, I had just gotten into the city. Now, this is a little girl from Iowa, right? I just got into the city. I didn't know how to get, literally, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. But I found a way to get down there, and it was Horowitz playing this unbelievable concert. I'd never heard anything like it, but his encore piece was playing Traumerei.
Oh,
is
that Schubert?
Schumann. And this gorgeous, lyric, simple piece. And I, to this day, am still hearing it in my head. And it just... So I love almost everybody that I'm listening to at the time because I admire everybody's technique.
Mm-hmm.
I admire their musicianship, and I don't think, I mean, criticizing people when they are gods in their own way. I mean, how can you not admire everyone? But that particular performance really changed my life.
Wow.
And what I'm hearing that many years later when I go to sleep at night and dream. So, and
it was live. It wasn't going down, taking the 45-minute trip by bus to check out a record, right? This was in person.
Live,
yeah.
Finding a bus that would go near there. And so, yeah, that was an amazing experience in my life. And as I say, I didn't appreciate it enough, or what he was giving me at that time, because I'm sure he would have loved to have gone to that concert himself. Maybe he did have something else to do. I don't know.
Well, let me wrap up by telling you what I appreciate. What I appreciate, Ronnie, and follow me on this, is that you didn't win the LA Phil job, because you may not have gone to New York. And if you hadn't gone to New York, you wouldn't have met Avis. Right. So I appreciate both of those things. Right. And if you hadn't met Avis, I wouldn't be talking to Aaron here, right, at the bottom of my screen. So, and of course, I'm grateful for all the Ronnie, I've told you this before, grateful that all you and Canadian Brass have provided for trumpet players, for musicians. But even since then, I think it's a greater contribution, what you've done since then and continue to do. So thanks for continue to teach and play and inspire. Aaron, same to you. I just think you're a chip off the old block, or an apple that didn't fall from the tree very far at all. And thanks for all that you've been contributing. Avis, I can't wait to hear you play again. It's just it's beautiful, and I appreciate everything that you've shared tonight too. Sharing a little bit of love right there. So we're going to wrap up, and don't go anywhere. We'll wrap up and then stick on the line, as it were, for just a couple of seconds. But let me just throw this out there. Thanks to my guests, the ROM Trio, Ronnie, Avis, and Aaron. And the next live with is actually just around the corner. That's the 28th of March. That's this coming Sunday, 3 p.m., not 8 p.m., but 3 p.m. And my guest is going to be Matilda Lloyd, a brilliant international soloist. She's from England. And if you don't know anything about her, check her out on YouTube before we get to that interview. But that's going to be a lot of fun. She's just a terrific, terrific young artist. And let's see, again, thanks to Chop Saver for sponsoring this. And let's see, anything else? Oh, I'm going to throw one other thing in here just to make sure I get this in here. But I've got this new shirt, the World Trumpet Force. And I know that's Vintelabis magis, which it translates as push harder. Okay, so I know that might not be the funniest thing, but it's funny to me. So
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. So I'll have to get you guys. I don't know if you wear T-shirts, but I'll have to get you guys.
I wear T-shirts all the time. I love
Well, we're gonna have to.
Larry,
I'll have to put some of
take my
those in
money.
the mail.
Take my money. I want one.
Well, we'll talk. So, okay, we're going to wrap up there. Again, thanks everybody for listening. I'm going to sign off. So hang on here.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Larry.
And